couple of guys that have established or they're assuming positions in the backcourt for Philadelphia and their impact. One of them has been pretty solid to this point. I want to start with Quentin Grimes, who is now with the Sixers, coming over in that trade for Caleb Martin coming from Dallas. And Quentin Grimes is one of those just like perfect 3-and-D type twos that you can throw on the court and know that he's going to shoot 37, 38% from three. You know he's going to contribute as far as the scoring goes. And you can place him on some of the better guards on the opposing team in the league. And that's really valuable to have. So from that perspective, I do understand the move for Philadelphia, moving off of Caleb Martin. He himself has been banged up and he's been underwhelming. So you bring in Quentin Grimes. He's a good bit younger. He's still in his early 20s. He has a lot to contribute. And obviously, Nick Nurse has a lot of trust and faith in what he can bring to the court, playing 30 minutes a game, averaging career-high in points and assists so far in just 8 games. It's a small sample, but he has been a positive contributor for this team that needs guys like him to kind of fill the gaps to where maybe Embiid's not available or Paul George doesn't look himself. They really rely on guys like Quentin Grimes to really have a positive impact.
Yeah, so I did like the trade. I think generally you could make a case either way for which one of those guys is better right now between Quentin Grimes and Caleb Martin. I lean Quentin Grimes because I just have much more faith in his shooting, which I mean is sort of a no-brainer, but that just is more significant to me when it comes to a role player of that ilk. When they're in the same sort of range as far as overall value, and one of them is 29 and one of them is 24, I think it just makes sense to take the 24-year-old, especially because the Sixers also got their own second-round pick back in that trade, and that now is looking like a top, 38 pick or so at worst, and especially if they don't end up keeping their protected first-round pick, having just any avenue to add a young player in the draft would be really nice. I've been impressed with what I've seen from him. He hasn't shot the ball particularly well from three-point range either. I mean, he's at 36%, which is certainly not bad, but he was right at 40%, right? I think just a tick below 40% with Dallas this year. What's really stood out to me, I feel like people know at this point with Grimes, solid defender, can guard, can defend guards, maybe some smaller wings, knock down open shots, very willing three-point shooter, which to me is arguably just as important as accurate three-point shooter.
Yep.
He's shown way more on the ball stuff than I expected. Just looking at just scanning through as many numbers as I could find when the trade went down, I was impressed with the pull-up shooting numbers. I did not expect at any point for him to be given a chance to play backup point guard minutes, which happened really quickly. And Nick Nurse has been going with it. I asked Nick about it before the Knicks game, and he said, understandably mixed results. A guy on a new team who doesn't have a ton of point guard reps in the NBA, trying to figure out on the fly how to make it work. You're bound to have some, sort of a mixed bag, but they've liked what they've seen enough that they want to keep trying it. I think something that's, when we talk about how this season, it might be a lost season for them in terms of wins and losses, the next 7 weeks have to be about something. And I think one of those things is before Quentin Grimes hits restricted free agency, as they try to figure out what sort of, what they would be willing to offer him, what offer sheets they might match if there are other teams interested. I think something that is really interesting to observe is if he proves that, being a secondary ball handler is something that he can do long term, because that might change their outlook on him or another team's outlook on him. Everybody's watching these games. There might be a team that says, whoa, there's some on-ball upside that we didn't know existed here, and we might value this guy more. So that's what I would be watching for with him. I think the Sixers have been impressed, and I think they had quite a bit of conviction when you trade Caleb Martin, who, as you said, has been banged up all year, has not played well at all. It was a disappointing signing to date. But that was a 4-year contract at a really nice number. I think it was roughly, maybe 435 with incentives that could take it up a little bit. Now there's a trade kicker in there that bumped it up a tiny bit. Trading a guy that has established that he can be a valuable role player for contending teams year after year on a long-term, cost-effective deal, you really do need to have conviction that the guy you're getting can slot into a similar sort of significance in terms of role, even if not the same actual basketball role.
Yep.
And he just offers so much more offensive utility than Caleb Martin did, who to his credit played much of the season through like several injuries, sometimes multiple injuries at once, and that's just sort of how he's always been. And it's a testament to the significance of the hip thing that has still kept him out, that he's been out for as long as he's been. I'm quite intrigued by Grimes. I think they had confidence when they made that trade that he was someone that they are, have a good feeling they'll be able to bring back next year. That there's not going to be a situation where someone gives him an offer sheet that they don't feel comfortable matching. As you said, he's sort of the kind of guy that slots in perfectly on any team. It's like the ultimate sort of portable role player. Like if you drop Quentin Grimes on 29 other rosters in the NBA, he would make sense within the context of those teams. Those are always good players to have, not just for yourself, but for the future if you need to make an upgrade, and that's a valuable piece that you have. But the on-ball stuff has been the most intriguing to me because it's not something I saw coming at all. I could have seen a little bit of, attacking closeouts, occasional end of shot clock pull-up jumpers. Full-fledged backup point guard minutes was not anything I expected from him. And if he can get settled in that role where he's sort of starts at the 2 next to Maxey, he checks out, he comes back in when Maxey's out, and all of a sudden he's running the show. Mm-hmm. If he can get comfortable there, it becomes a really interesting part of their future.